Hey folks, welcome back to another Dice Tower preview. I'm Mark, and today we're taking a look at Cube Monster, which is brought to you by Crazy Box Inc. It's for 1 to 4 players, ages 14 and up, and games generally run about 50 to 100 minutes. The Cube Monster awakens, and the race begins. Your village chose you, their champion, to climb up Mount Kubia and beat your opponents to the top. No matter your craft, you are first and foremost a builder. It is in your blood, and the climb up Mount Kubia will be far from easy. Play by the monster's rules, feed it, worship it, build for it, and be rewarded greatly. However, fail to meet its demands, and disaster will befall all your people. Cube Monster is a strategic engine building game where you take the role of champions racing to the top of Mount Kubia, sacrificing cubes on your way to the mountaintop. Take turns feeding the monster and awaken its desire for offerings. Use that wisely to reap rewards as your opponents suffer its wrath. Do you build structures, planning for amazing cube generating combos, or do you brute force your way to the top? The choice is yours. So again, your main goal here is to traverse Mount Kubia and make it to the top. First player that does is going to win the game. However, whoever is at the highest point when you reach 16 rounds will also win the game. So a couple different options. And there are some tiebreakers as well. Now, each player is going to have their own village board, and this is where you're going to be doing the bulk of your building. You have several buildings that you can put on here that generate cubes and things like that, and you're going to start with a couple factories that do that for you. Now, what's really neat about these cubes is that they're big, bulky, and really have this nice feel to them as you build the different types of buildings. And you do have to put them in the right configuration for that particular building, which I really like. Now, you can build factories and you can build statues right out of the gate, but you have to start to traverse the mountain to get other buildings and unlock them, so to say, so you can add them to your village board. And we have a monster board. You'll see that there's a grid here, colored grid, and you'll be placing cubes in this grid every round of the game. And if you ever fill up a line, then the monster is going to demand a tribute. Not just orthogonal, but even a diagonal line will cause the tribute to trigger. Now below that is where the cube pit is. And based on the player count will determine the number of cubes you're going to pull from the bag for every round. In a 3-player game, it's going to be 5. And you have the first player who is known as the feeder. Now, before we jump into how that works, let's take a look at the buildings and exactly what they're going to do. First and foremost, we have factories. Factories are going to generate you cubes through the course of the game. Now, if you pull a cube from the cube pit on the monster board and you have a factory of that same color, then you get to pull an additional cube from the bag matching that color. And if you happen to have 2 factories of that color, then you get to pull 3 cubes. Fantastic. And what's great about having 3 cubes of the same color is that you can trade them in for any 1 cube that you so choose. It is a great way to generate and upgrade cubes as you move through the course of the game, but having multiple factories is really going to help you out, and there's even some upgrade cards we'll take a look at next. You also have statues to start with, and you're going to build them in this grid configuration. You're going to stack them up, and you have to choose where to place them. You have limited slots. You've got yellow, purple, and this teal or green that you're going to be placing them in. And once you do, then you get an upgrade, or you get a reward card, I should say. If it's yellow, it's a reward card, and it's usually a cube or something extra to pull from the bag to add to your free area for building with and so forth. Or you get the purple, which is an upgrade. Are fantastic cards because you get to upgrade all the different types of buildings. You never know what's coming up, but you might get an additional cube pulling from certain types of factories. You might get to add to any number of the different buildings, but you'll slide it in under your board showing that you created more upgrades for that particular building type. And you can keep adding on to it, which is fantastic. And the icons are so straightforward in this game. It's really clear how and what they do and how they work. And then we have the green or teal reward deck, which is known as tricks. Now, these are going to do various things. You might be able to move your statue to a new location. You might be able to split your statue up and create a shrine, which we'll get to what shrines are. Or you might be able to combine shrines to create a new statue, or just go get new cubes from the bag, or even get yellow reward cards. So lots of different things those green ones are going to do, and they do allow you to hold on to them at times. There's different icons showing when their usage is. It's all very clear on the card and how and when you can use them for sure. So getting those cards by either building statues or moving up the mountain is key to help you win the game. Also, your village board is very clear about how many buildings of a certain type you can put into play. Now, the other 3 on your village board have to be unlocked. You have to move up the mountain in order to do that. Moving to step 2 will give you the marketplace and the shrine, and then finally step 3 will give you the temple. Now the marketplace is all about reducing the cost. It's your economy of cubes. So typically you're turning in 3 of the same color to pull any one from the bag. The marketplace allows you to turn in 2 instead of 3. The shrine is going to help you when you have to do offerings to the monster. So if an offering is triggered, well then you will have to roll the dice. The result of this dice is 1, 2, or 3, and each player will have to contribute that many cubes to the bag. Now, in general, you're going to always have to contribute. If it's a 3, you're going to have to put 3 different colored cubes in. However, if you have shrines, shrines allow you to double up. So if you have a purple shrine, you can put 2 purples and a red in to meet that 3 cube requirement. So shrines do become key, really key actually, through the course of the game. So what happens then if you can't fulfill the offering? Well, then a disaster card is pulled. And this affects all the players that can't fulfill it. And in the case of this, you'll have to destroy a building. Monster destroys a factory. Oh, it's so bad. So there's lots of terrible things that can happen from this disaster deck, but it's going to play into every time you can't fulfill. So again, shrines are very important. And then finally we have temples. You have different colored temples, but the base of every temple has to consist of all the different cube colors. The top of the temple can be any cube color you choose. And what's nice about the temples is that they can chain basically. So when you pull a cube from the cube pit, that will activate your factory. But if it happens to also be the color of your temple, the top of your temple, you get to pull another random cube from the bag, which will then again activate your factories and duplicating cubes and so forth. So it becomes this real nice engine building as you get different cubes and you move through the different markets and you generate those to build more buildings and help you with offerings down the road. So how does all of this come together? Well, rounds are very straightforward. One player is the first player, known as the feeder. You will grab cubes from the bag, random cubes, based on the player count again, and put them into the cube pit on the cube monster board. Now, again, the first player will then choose what colored cube to place in the grid. That again will trigger offerings. And then it moves to the next player and they get to pick a cube from that pit and activate their factories, build other buildings. They can do whatever they can do based on what cubes they have and exchanging them, building other buildings and so forth. Also, spending cubes to move up the mountain. You'll see at the top of all the mountains, or all the cubes in the mountain, are cube requirements. So as you move up, it gets harder and harder. But also, when you get to cubes 4 and 5, it starts to trigger more offerings that are needed when the monster requires that offering from you. So as you move up this mountain, you also get reward cards. It'll show what color reward card and gives you the ability to tap into super cubes, which are at the bottom of the board. Now, if you meet the requirements, you'll see at the top of the card what buildings you need to have in play in order to grab that card. Now at the bottom is the super cube. It's basically a wild, but you can only use super cubes to help you move up the mountain ever closer to the top. So those cards are fantastic for moving up, but they also are used in tiebreakers. Finally, when the cube monster board comes back to the first player, that player then gets to activate cubes and build buildings as they see fit. But then there'll still be 1 cube left over, which then gets added to the track, the round tracker. And in general, nothing's really going to happen unless that cube matches the color of the number of the track. Well, then you're going to have to put another cube on the offering, and you as the first player get to decide what cube to place out there from the bag. So that's really the general aspects of what you're doing through the course of the game. And again, there's so many different types of rewards that you can get to augment the abilities of your factories and different buildings. Really helps a lot, and just giving you more and more cubes to work with. But you also have to be mindful because your free cube area is limited. So you need to continually move through those cubes, build, and keep moving up the mountain. And hopefully you reach the top before your fellow players. All right, folks, just a reminder once again, this has been a Dice Tower paid preview, and everything you've seen here has been in prototype form, so keep a close eye on the campaign for any changes that still may occur. Now, with that said, one of the neat things is that if you go all in on this game, they have a 3D version of the mountain and the monster board, the claw. It looks fantastic. But I would say that just in general, this game has this amazing table presence, and I like the tactile experience with these big, chunky cubes building the different building types. And of course, the engine building is really, really well done. But folks, ultimately, if this looks like something of interest to you, I'm sure they'd appreciate your support. So I think that's it for me, and until next time, we'll see you at the table.